Let's get this started. First presentation, Aurora Cannabis with a current funded capacity of over 500,000 kilograms per year. Aurora is one of the largest and fastest growing cannabis companies. Aurora has established a growing constellation of subsidiaries and strategic partnerships that provide differentiation in terms of geographic reach, production, technology, product offering, and execution. I'll now hand it over to Mark Lackmaker, VP of Investor Relations for Aurora Cannabis.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for doing my presentation. Any questions? Hi there, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. October 11th, in 6 days from now, we're going to have something quite incredible happening. It's the start of legal sales to the adult consumer use market in Canada. It's a big event that everyone's been looking forward to for a long time, ever since the Liberals promised that this would happen. And it represents the next catalyst in the industry. It represents a huge opportunity. But the opportunity is much bigger than that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about before I start talking about Aurora. When I do presentations like this, I like to do a little experiment, which I won't do here in the US. But in Canada, I asked the room, how many of you have transacted in the black market over the last 6 months, maybe 2 years, something like that? And invariably, a number of hands will go up. My next question then is, come October 17, how many of you will be transacting in the legal cannabis market in Canada? And the number of hands that goes up is much larger. And that tells me one thing, and I've done this experiment in various settings, and what it tells me is that the interest in cannabis as a substance, not just medically, not just recreationally, but also medically and also from a wellness perspective, is much larger than any of the black market numbers that people use to estimate market size by make you believe. And then another thing that usually happens when I'm in a social setting is that when people find out that I'm in the cannabis industry, they start giving me their shopping list or their wish list. You know, what kind of products do we want? And what strikes me every single time is that this group of new people that's going to come into the cannabis market, the people that are not captured by any of the black market data that we have, is that they're all interested in the value-added products. They want THC bath bombs, they want topicals, they want, you know, a whole variety of high value-added products. And that's just on the recreational side. On the medical side, we're looking at a whole other range of opportunities in terms of targeted applications, medication or therapies that have been developed for a specific medical indication. Think of something, this is exceptionally good for arthritis. This is great for medical indication A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. That's the other thing about cannabis. If you'd asked a group of doctors about 2-3 years ago, what is the pharmaceutical compound with the broadest medical utility? Invariably, all 100 of them would have told you this is aspirin. Has to be aspirin. Has like 3 or 4 uses, nothing else has that broader utility. Ask that same group of people now, you know, with so much more positive research being done on cannabis and so much more anecdotal, also scientific evidence coming out. People are starting to see that, wait a minute, cannabinoids have the broadest medical utility. So here's another indication that whatever people think the market is like now, it's going to be much bigger in the future because a lot of research is now being done, clinical trials, human health outcomes, and a whole variety of other trials. So it's going to be much bigger. The other thing about cannabis is that when you talk about it from a consumer perspective, compared with alcohol. Alcohol does 3 things: central nervous system suppressant, it's a disinhibitor, and it gives you hangovers. And I've been telling this for a while, these 3 uses. There's one other use, which is people use alcohol to clean with. Not the biggest market application, but that's pretty much it. And alcohol you consume, it's a liquid in a vessel. I mean, there might be, you know, some in food and what have you, but it's very limited in the delivery technologies that are being used. Again, cannabis, you can smoke it, you can vape it, you can eat it, you can drink it, you can there's a wide variety, and new developments are coming out all the time. New developments that we're working on as well. So we've got a market that we believe is going to be much bigger on the recreational side than people are believing. We think it's going to be much bigger medically. We strongly believe that as a substance, cannabis has the potential to become much bigger than alcohol. So against that setting, I want to talk about Aurora, because this setting gives you the opportunity that we're looking at. Sorry, do I actually have a clicker, Phil? Oh, this is very high-tech, people. So I want to talk about Aurora against its back, because there's a huge opportunity. And us Canadian licensed producer, we have an advantage, a big advantage compared to any other country, and also the US. We can operate internationally. We have an early mover advantage in this incredible market on a global scale, on a global basis. So Aurora, if you look at this slide, this gives what we believe is the blueprint of establishing a company that's going to be a leader in this industry for years or generations to come. That's our mission. Our mission is to be the scale and margin leader globally in the cannabis industry. And for us, this is the roadmap that takes us there. It's about scale, it's about cost, it's about research, it's about diversification, it's about footprint, it's about branding, it's about cost of capital. So let's go through this one by one and tell you why we believe Aurora is very differentiated. As Phil mentioned, we've got a funded capacity well in excess of 500,000 kilograms a year. Just put that number in your head and think that cannabis actually sells by the gram. So we're talking about a funded capacity of in excess of 500 million grams a year. And this is prior to the ICC acquisition that we're going through right now, which will increase our capacity in Latin America. And again, that is a play with a global aspect to it as well. Makes us one of the biggest cannabis companies in the world. When we announced our last quarter, our run rate was about 45,000 kilograms a year. By the end of the year, around year end, we believe the run rate is going to be in excess of 150,000 kilograms a year. And subsequently, we're ramping up to the number, as you see here, over 500 million grams a year. It's 11 facilities, 2 continents. We're right now predominantly in Canada, where we've got 9 facilities. We've got a facility that is growing in Denmark, and we'll be building a much larger facility in Denmark as well for the European market. Not on here is a facility that we're looking at in Malta, which will be a derivative-focused facility for the Southern European markets. And then obviously, once we complete the ICC acquisition, we're going to have further capacity in Latin America. The thing here is massive scale. And you see that the facilities vary in size. Aurora Mountain is our first facility, was the world's first purpose-built cannabis facility. By the way, can you hear me like this? In the back, can you hear me like this? Or should I talk like this? Mic's better? Okay, I'll keep the mic, sorry. And that tells you something about where we come from, how we are differentiated versus a lot of our competitors. We believe purpose-built, high-tech. A lot of our competitors, when they started out, they retrofitted existing facilities, retrofitted greenhouses. Now, a traditional greenhouse, the costs aren't particularly high, but it's got some issues. It's open to the air, so it's very susceptible to things like powdery mildew, spider mites, and other contaminants. Also, out of a traditional greenhouse, you only get about 2 or 3 harvests a year. An indoor facility, Aurora Mountain, our first facility, we do 5.5 harvests a year. The other thing is, like in a greenhouse, the crop you get in April is probably going to have a slightly different quality profile from the crop you get in August. In our indoor facilities, where we control all environmental variables, you're going to see very high quality, but also consistently high quality. And that's very important, not just for the recreational market, but especially for the medical market. So that was our first facility. And then when, the government said we're going to have recreational use, we're like, okay, this is going to be a big market, and we could already see that this is not just a Canadian thing, it's a global thing. So what is our next step going to be? Our next step was Aurora Sky, which has lent its name to the Sky class facilities. Aurora Sky, when we first started talking about it, we talked about it as a hybrid greenhouse. What it really is, it's a massive scale indoor facility with a specialty glass roof. I want to talk a little bit more about Aurora Sky because it's so disruptive for the industry. So massive scale, 800,000 square feet at full capacity, over 100,000 kilograms of product a year. I mentioned traditional greenhouse, 2, maybe 3 harvests a year. Aurora Sky is probably going to push about 6.5 harvests a year. There's 17 separate grow rooms in there, 1 mother room, 16 grow rooms. We're going to have a harvest every 3.5 days. Now, why can we do this? Why can we do a harvest like clockwork every 3.5 days? It's because there's a high degree of automation in this facility. Everything you can't, it's a little difficult to see on these pictures, and we'll have videos of this that will be going on our website. All the plants are moved around using robotic cranes. We own the world's preeminent greenhouse design facility. This is all technology that comes out of the Netherlands. Netherlands is a tiny country. I come from there myself. It's a tiny country, lots of people in a small space, the second largest exporter of food in the world. Now, how do we do that? Well, we don't have any space. It's because we've got these phenomenal, very high-tech greenhouse facility. So a lot of our technology comes from, Dutch technology suppliers, but our greenhouse engineers, designers, Larsen, now part of Aurora Larsen Projects, they've been doing this for over 30 years. They've got a lot of proprietary know-how themselves. So automation leads to a few things, economies of scale, increase plant density, reduce human-plant interaction, so we're taking a disease vector or a contamination vector out. Let's talk about the economies of scale. Aurora's mountain that I talked about earlier, about 5,000 kilograms a year, 125 people to get that 5,000 kilograms a year. Aurora Sky, once it's completely up and running, over 100,000 kilograms a year, so 20 times what we produce at mountain, 380 people roughly. So 20x the capacity, about 3 times the people. And what this results in the end is a facility that is financially very efficient. We're looking at production cost of well below $1 a gram. And these are very low production costs for an indoor facility. But the other thing is that the quality of the cannabis is going to be very high. The consistency of the quality is going to be there. Each of these rooms, each individual room is larger than the entire mountain facility, but each room has complete control of the environmental variables. So we're going to be producing high quality cannabis at low cost. So that makes us a farmer of cannabis, of great cannabis, of low cost cannabis. So the next thing you need, you need to be able to sell your cannabis. So we have worked hard, and we've got a very early mover advantage in establishing a very broad distribution network. And we're probably the company with the broadest developed international footprint of any of the cannabis companies. Now, in Canada, medically, we sell directly to the patients. We've got one of the largest patient counts with MedRelief. It stands well in excess of 60,000 patients and continues to grow. Recreationally, every province in Canada is different how to do it, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But we've got coast-to-coast supply agreements, and we also own 25% of Alcanna. And Alcanna is North America's largest non-government run liquor retailer. And they have, over 25 years of experience in selling a controlled substance, namely alcohol. They got over 25 years of relationships with commercial landlords, which there are not that many in Canada that own the prime locations. They also have 25 years of experience in building shops, in building retail outlets. So they tell me it takes them about 6 weeks to build a retail outlet. So come October 17, there's going to be a limited number of stores through Canada, but it's going to go quite quickly after that. And Alcanna is exceptionally well positioned to establish a very large footprint. Beyond that, we've got relationships with the largest pharmacy chains in Canada. I believe that a lot of people who are sort of cannabis naive is the word. People are not familiar with cannabis, but see that this could be a therapy that's very good for them or a substance that they want to try. They'll go to a trusted source such as a pharmacy chain. We've got supply agreements everywhere there. Internationally, we are in Europe. We're on 5 continents, basically. Europe, South America, Australia, South Africa, and North America. I want to talk a little bit about Europe. And this is another thing about our facilities. If you want to sell cannabis in the EU, your facility needs to be EU GMP certified. GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. It's a pharmaceutical level certification that is very difficult to get. If your facility has not been built from the onset to be GMP certifiable, it's very difficult, very expensive, and in a number of cases, it's simply impossible to do. Right now, there's about 6 or 7 such facilities in the entire world. So Germany, a market with 82 million people, there's only 6 or 7 facilities that can service this market. Still early stages in Germany, but there's rapid growth, and it's woefully undersupplied. We own 2 of those facilities. So you can see what a huge head start we have there. We're going to be building a facility in Malta, as I said. We were the first company, the first non-government company to sell cannabis into Italy. And we are looking at entering a lot of other European markets. And as I mentioned, we've got 2 facilities on the go in Denmark. So we've got a broad domestic and international distribution network, probably better developed than most others, if not all others. And again, that gives us a huge head start, an early mover advantage. This is all about grabbing the opportunity, grabbing the early move, executing on the early mover advantage opportunity, and establishing yourself as a leader. And it will become very hard for people to catch up with that. So we've got distribution, we've got the product, we've got the source of it, the cannabis. But what I was mentioning earlier, the real opportunity, we want to be the margin leader, is in the derivative products. And science plays an incredibly important role at Aurora Cannabis. We've got the largest science team in the industry. We've got over 40 PhDs and MSCs and other science and product development people. Science at Aurora goes through the entire value chain. We own a company. It was founded by the people who were the first in the world to map the cannabis genome. On the back of that, we've got some very interesting IP, but it means that we're at, from the seed to post-production in terms of science. On the seed end, what does that mean? What can you do with that? Well, think about it like this. Cannabis as a commercial crop is very young. A lot of research that has been done on other crops like tobacco, canola oil, what have you, there's a lot of genetic science has gone into there, a lot of breeding science about improving yields, efficiencies, quality, what have you. That is still the early stages in cannabis, and we own the leaders in this sector. We own the leaders in this field. What they'll be doing is developing plants that have the physical characteristics that make them the optimal shape and type for grow in a highly automated environment. And again, Aurora Sky, 100,000 kilogram a year facility, if you increase yield by a few percentage points or you reduce cost by a few percentage points, the impact on the top and bottom line are going to be absolutely massive. But it's much more than that. The science that we're looking at product development. We already got one of the broadest product portfolios in the industry, soft gels, gel caps, hard caps. Through partnership with CTT, we've got exclusive access to sublingual wafer technology. You probably know the Listerine strips. It's like a strip that you put under your tongue, but these are going to be cannabis infused. Rapid onset of action, very discreet drug delivery mechanism. It's something that we believe will do very well in the industry. And as I said, we've got the largest team, and that's going to be developing many, many more products. And how do we go about it? I mean, our science people don't live in a vacuum. They cooperate, that's another thing about Aurora. We are very integrated, and that sets us apart as well. Our science people talk to our product development people, talk to our regulatory people, talk to our opportunities people, our market development people, but also our clinical care people. We've got probably the largest proprietary data set on customer experiences, usages, efficacies in the industry. We use that to identify new potential products. And from an economical perspective, we identify what would be good to introduce to the market. Then we go to our science people. How can we do that? Our science people, you know, if necessary, can talk to our genetics, our breeding people, saying, we want a strain that matches these characteristics. Now, think about it medically. Think about, you know, cannabis as a medical therapy. We're doing clinical trials. Out of those clinical trials, we're looking to develop marketable IP. We're also looking to develop very specifically targeted medical therapies. Again, you know, think about arthritis, think about epilepsy, think about, you know, this whole spectrum of medical indications where cannabis has been shown to be good. We're going to be developing things that are much more narrowly targeted. You can go the FDA route. Right now, I think medical research, human health outcomes will lead us a long way along the way already towards the development of new products. But that's why science is so important. Because we've got the largest team in the industry, it means that we can focus not on one compound or one minor cannabinoid, but we can focus on a whole spectrum of new product developments. And that's going to lift us ahead of the competition even further. And that's an acceleration that's going to be very difficult to catch up with or even to keep up with. So based on this, the science vertically integrated throughout the value chain, we'll be developing the high margin products that will be driving the profitability of the company going forward. So Aurora is growing phenomenally fast. When I started working with the company, we had less than 40 people. Right now, we've got more than 1,500 people. It's a growth that's necessary. A lot of this growth is in terms of support, because driving growth is one thing. You have to carry that growth as well. So positions that are not really in the limelight, you know, we're talking about IT, we're talking about HR, we're talking about customer care. They're not really in the limelight. They're not the people that are on the coalface most of the time. But they're incredibly important to have this kind of an organization that can carry growth. And together with everything else that we've done, we've done a lot of M&A as well. We've done over 25 transactions in the last 2.5 years. And that all combined has made us the fastest growing LP in the industry. We started, and this is something that not a lot of people know, we started 18 months later than what we call the Blessed 13. And the Blessed 13 were the first 13 companies that got their sales license in Canada. We were 18 months behind them, which in cannabis is light years. It's a lifetime. We've blown past absolutely every one of them. If you look on a pro forma basis, we're the largest cannabis company in the world in terms of revenues. And that's based on an incredibly high pace of execution and quality of product. Obviously, if you don't have the quality of product, customer care, what have you, people aren't going to buy your stuff. So that brings me to another point. I talked about the early mover advantage. We need to grab that opportunity to establish a leader for years, decades, generations to come. I think this picture, don't bother looking at all the individual bits here, but this gives you a bit of an overview of what we've done in the last 2.5 years. All across the value chain, we've been, you know, developing new things. We've been making acquisition. We're making strategic investments. And this has resulted in a company that's now vertically integrated along the value chain. And the importance of this is that this is about capturing margin along the entire value chain. It's about having the different elements of the value chain actually support, amplify, and accelerate the development of other elements in the value chain. And I talked about science. I talked about our product development people. They'll feed back into the plant science. The plant science will develop new products that are going to be specifically targeted for certain applications. It all works together. And As a result, we now have an organization that we believe ticks all the boxes to be sustainably an industry leader for many, many years to come. Just to give you a little overview of the financials, we had 90.1 million in revenues Q4. It's the quarter to June 30th on a pro forma basis with MedRelief, which we acquired in April. It's 33 million, which makes us the largest. Our cost to operate keep falling because of the Cannabis acquisitions. Cost to operate were a little higher, but that's coming down. Sorry, cost to produce. But as you can see, with new products coming out, the average net selling price of cannabis is going up. So that brings me to the end. We believe that Aurora has what it takes to be the industry leader, has what it takes to capture that early mover advantage and keep accelerating from here on. We've got the largest footprint. We are in markets with that are very hard to access, like the EU, which I mentioned. We've got the GMP facilities. There's only 6 of them in the world. We own 2 of them. We've got the largest distributor of cannabis in the EU. The EU is a market with over 400 million people. We're in the process of acquiring ICC Labs, which is the undisputed industry leader in Latin America. It's another market with well over 600 million people. A lot of science there, lots of derivative production capacity. It's going to be very interesting, lots of political connections. Gives us an access to be the market leader in the largest markets. We believe we have what it takes to be the industry leader. We also do one thing that I forgot to point out, low cost of capital. We're the first company to get a large bank loan facility, straight up debt, up to 250 million through Tier 1 bank in Canada. Gives you an idea of how we as an organization have matured. Have 1,500 people, we get Tier 1 bank originated debt, low cost of capital, and it also gives us the capital to keep accelerating. We think we're phenomenally well positioned to grab this incredible opportunity. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very much. And if you've got any questions, I'll be available for that.
Any questions?
So this is Agropro, and with it came a distributor as well. It's the largest producer of organic hemp in Europe, possibly in the world, but we don't know that for sure. 1,600 hectares on the contract. Next year, they may have up to 3,000 hectares on the contract. Very interestingly, this company so far only used hemp seeds. All that they did was hemp seed and hemp seed derived products. And they left a huge quantity of biomass on their fields to rot, which makes it quite an accretive acquisition, I must say. So there's a lot of hemp-containing biomass that we will be extracting for CBD. And that CBD is going to fuel our wellness strategy. We've got Hempco. We've got 53% in Hempco in Canada. Through ICC, we will have access to high CBD or CBD-rich hemp in Latin America. And obviously, through Agropro, we'll have the largest quantity of organic hemp or organic hemp-derived CBD. If you look at the cannabis market, I see the 3 broad segments, recreational or adult consumer use, medical, and wellness. And wellness is a market that I believe is going to be exploding in the next few years. There's a huge emphasis, a huge focus on the aspect, the wellness aspects of CBD in all its variety of how it can be administered. Having access to a low-cost source of CBD is going to be critical, and a high-quality source of CBD is going to be critical. So Agropro is going to, be an important part of having that supply of CBD. But also Agropro and the distribution through, they're already represented in a whole bunch of countries. They're selling in Asia, they're selling in Europe, they're selling in the US. They may be in Latin America as well. I can't remember exactly. But it's about global footprint of a product category that's going to explode. And again, we link it with our science people to develop new products. Okay. Yeah.
I've got 2 questions, actually with Market Watch. First question is, yesterday, as I'm sure you know, the Canadian securities regulators released some guidance, I guess, about how cannabis companies are reporting non-GAAP numbers as well as a bunch of other metrics. And I'm curious how much and to what extent that affects the numbers that you presented to us today and Aurora's numbers going forward. And the second question is, I wonder if you could talk to me a bit, or talk to us, I guess, a bit about how management thinks about its investment strategy. You know, the Green Organic Dutchman investment, for example, added quite a bit to your net income in the last quarter, and you guys have made a number of other strategic investments in Canadian companies. So I'm just curious, you know, to the extent that, you know, how management thinks about those going forward.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take that from the top. So, yeah, there was guidance. I have to say, I saw it late last night. I glanced over it. What I do know is that Aurora is probably the most transparent company in how it reports on its number. We split out a lot of detail that other companies do not provide. So I have to look into exactly what it was they wanted, because I think what they wanted was the impact on cost of the biological assets, or what it would cost to produce those biological assets. I haven't had a chance to talk with my CFO about it. That might be one additional line item. That's how I see it, because we report very openly, very transparently. So I think, but you know, I'll have to talk to my CFO, that it will add just one additional line item. Maybe it to when, you know, you have to split it out of your biological assets more in general. But we'll have to see. It's something that we'll obviously will comply with and that we'll work towards, because again, that's something where we want to show leadership. It was interesting. We did our first conference call at the end of the quarter, and we had the analyst coming on who was quite happy with the level of disclosure that we provided versus other LPs. So we'll try and continue to show that leadership in the industry. Secondly, our investment strategy. So a lot of these investments are strategic investments. That said, we made a number of investments in public companies that have yielded incredible unrealized gains. So I think at the end of, June 30th, the June 30 quarter, we were sitting on over 700 million in marketable securities, whereas the cost base was very, very significantly lower. We've got a broad portfolio of investments. Some of those will give us a strategic advantage. Some of those will give us a strategic advantage in the early stages of the industry. I can see that down the line, some of these investments might be of a lesser strategic importance, but will have appreciated significantly in value, and then we might monetize them. But so it's a bit of both. It's a financial investment and it's a strategic investment, and it depends on each of the companies in their portfolio. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very. Oh, sorry. Yeah, obviously distribution is very important. In terms of the Canadian adult consumer use market, we've got distribution capabilities on both sides of the country. Aurora Sky is located at the Edmonton International Airport, which gives us a phenomenal head start in terms of distribution. And as an organization, we have 1,500 people. Not all of those people do investor relations. A lot of those people do real jobs, including distribution. So we know that it's something we need to do. It has to be a core competency, and it will be there. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.